England's Conservatives pick at each other. As I mentioned in my live stream, Tory MP Nadine Dorries resigns and insults Prime Minister Sunak as bloodless, for example. Actually, she wanted to have said bye for a long time. She's doing that now, but with quite loud slamming doors. The Conservative member of the House of Commons, Nadine Dorries, has submitted her resignation and at the same time badly insulted the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. In June 23, she actually wanted to resign and follow her idol Boris Johnson. However, while Johnson had vacated a seat as MP, Dorries initially stuck to her mandate, which she had held for almost 20 years. Pure greed was suspected in her constituency there. In a letter on social media, however, she's now addressing the current Prime Minister head-on. Since you took office a year ago, the country has been run by a zombie parliament in which nothing of importance happens, she writes. And also, you miss important political visions that the British could use to raise themselves up. The British media see the reason for her fire letter in the fact that she's denied the title of nobility and thus a lifelong seat in the British upper house, the House of Lords. She had been suggested by ex-Prime Minister Boris Johnson for this. However, everything has a far more serious background. The festering conflict within the Conservative Party between supporters of Johnson and Sunak over the interpretation of Conservative politics. When Dorries announced her move in June, Prime Minister Sunak was ridiculed by Labour. He was too weak to prove to mid-Bedfordshire voters that the Conservatives took her seriously by letting Dorries stay. Before I move on to the current story, I want to revisit Johnson's story a bit, which Dorries supports, and that really says a lot about her too. Let's talk about April 28th in 2021. The British Electoral Commission is launching a formal inquiry into the financing of the renovation of Johnson's Downing Street flat, citing suspicions that a criminal offence may have been committed. You know, the golden wallpaper or wallpaper gate. On October 26th of that year, the Conservative MP Owen Paterson from rural North Shropshire faces a 30-day suspension. The Standards Committee concludes that Paterson accepted payment for lobbying in violation of the statutes. And on November 3rd in 21, the government votes to relax Parliament's rules in the fight against corruption. That could prevent Paterson from leaving. However, the push sparks a debate over integrity led by Johnson, and the opposition accuses the Conservatives of corruption. And on November 4th, after massive resentment within its own party, the government dropped its plans to change the statutes. The Conservative MP Owen Paterson is resigning, necessitating a by-election in his North Shropshire constituency. On November 22nd, during a speech, Johnson gets tangled up in his manuscript. Instead, he talks about his recent visit to a children's theme park. It is based on the successful animated series Peppa Pig, in German it's Pepper Woods by the way, about a pig girl. He tells the business representatives present that everyone should visit the park like he did the day before. And further, I thought it was great. Peppa Pig World is to my liking. There are safe streets and discipline in the schools. Well, his leadership has come under renewed criticism, and he dismisses inquiries from reporters. I think people understood most of my messages. That went very well, he said. And then we have November 30th and 21. The Mirror newspaper reports a Christmas party in December 2020. The first such report of gatherings during the first lockdown at government offices and Johnson's office at Downing Street. Contacts in England were severely limited at the time. And then we had December 7th and 21. ITV has released a video showing staff reenacting a press conference and poking fun at how they are supposed to explain a gathering in Downing Street. And just hours later, Johnson had told reporters that he was very satisfied that no COVID restrictions were violated. On December 8 and 21, Johnson has apologized for the video of staff mocking a press conference and poking fun at how they are supposed to explain a meeting in Downing Street. He explains it makes him angry, and his spokesperson and advisor Allegra Stratton, who appears in the video herself, is stepping down. On December 9th and 21, the Conservative Party has been fined £17,800 by election officials. The party is accused of failing to properly declare a donation that helped fund the refurbishment of the Downing Street office or flat. And this again raised the question of who paid for the work. According to media reports, the renovation has cost hundreds of thousands of pounds. And on December 14th, Johnson is faced with a veritable revolt within his own ranks. Nearly 100 Tory MPs in the House of Commons are voting against the new rules he's calling for to contain the pandemic. Attempts behind the scenes to bring the Tory dissenters on course, after all, they fail. And the defeat fuels doubts about Johnson's position in the party. And on December 17th and 21, the head of the ongoing government investigations into possible corona violations at illegal Christmas parties, Simon Case, is resigning. Case withdrew to maintain public confidence in the investigation, as Johnson's office said. Case, the UK's most senior civil servant, came under criticism himself after British media reported meetings were held in his department in December 2020 as well. Then we have December 18th and 21. British Brexit Minister David Frost is resigning with immediate effect. As a reason, he gives concerns about the course of the government. According to the Mail on Sunday newspaper, Frost was frustrated with Johnson's policy decisions, including the COVID restrictions. And then on December 19th and 21, the Guardian newspaper published a photo of Johnson and more than a dozen others drinking wine in the Downing Street garden. The photo is said to have been taken on May 15th in 2020, also during the first lockdown. In the photo, Johnson can be seen seated at a table on the terrace with a glass of wine in front of him. His partner Kerry is sitting next to him with their newborn son in her arms. And then we have January 10th and 22. ITV has released an email from Johnson's private secretary inviting over 100 staff to a garden party at 10 Downing Street on May 20th in 2020. Everyone should bring their own booze. And according to the broadcaster, Johnson and his then partner and now wife Kerry were among the 40 or so guests. On January 12th, Johnson admits attending a garden party on May 20th in 2020. He apologizes in Parliament. He said he assumed that it had been a work meeting. Yeah, I like work meetings like that. He was there for about 25 minutes to thank employees, and in hindsight, he should have sent everyone back in, he says. Then we have July 1st, 2022. Conservatives suspend MP Christopher Pincher on charges of sexual misconduct. He had previously submitted his resignation as Deputy Parliamentary Secretary. On July 5th, Johnson apologizes on TV for his handling of Conservative Christopher Pincher's sexual misconduct case. Earlier, a former senior State Department official accused Johnson's office of lying in claiming that the PM was unaware of complaints of sexual misconduct by the Tory MP. And also on July 5th, the Chancellor of the Exchequer Rishi Sunak and Health Minister Sajid Javid resign. They deny Johnson's ability to lead an administration that adheres to standards. Several state secretaries are also resigning or announcing their resignation. On July 7th, the British Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Brendan Lewis, and Secretary of State for Security, Damien Hinds, have announced their resignation, as has recently appointed Education Secretary Michelle Donnellan. In total, more than 50 ministers and senior government officials have resigned in protest at Johnson and the scandals. And that was just a small selection of what Dorries apparently doesn't care about to this day. This Conservative Party continues to tear itself apart, and Dorries' move to resign could be disastrous for Sunak and his party, given that Nadine Dorries had turned her Mid-Bedfordshire constituency into a Conservative stronghold. And the two Conservative constituencies of Selby and Ainsty in Yorkshire that were lost in the summer of 23 have shown the Tories that even their ancestral strongholds can now be razed by the Labour Party. A by-election could therefore cost another constituency. As if the criticism of Conservative politics wasn't enough, the protest of those entitled to vote is now also directed more towards the character traits of Dorries. They accuse their MPs of having below average enthusiasm for work and with a penchant for wit that is typical of the British. They denigrate her as Dosser Dorries on a number of hand-painted banners in her Mid-Bedfordshire constituency. In German, for my German viewers, Dosser is Faulenzer. That's a friendly translation. It's all part of a large-scale campaign by Rishi Sunak, Dorries suspects, who accuses her of inciting, she accuses him of inciting the public against her. And the reason for her resignation is that she fears for her personal safety. Sunak had said several times that he felt his party members' contact with her constituency was too loose. In her resignation request, which she made public through the media, she lashes out at Sunak there. Contrary to your allegations and those of the media, my staff and I have served the people in my constituency faithfully and diligently to this day, she writes. At least 75,000 people see it differently. Because that's how many signatures there are on a nationwide petition calling on Dosser Dorries to finally take the step she had already announced in June 23 to give up her mandate. Shape up or ship out is written on some banners, meaning take care or get out. Critics see the reason for the former nurse's U-turn in the politician's salary. She receives £86,584 a year. That's the equivalent of more than 100,000 euros. And the signatories lack the equivalent value for this. As useful as a chocolate teapot is therefore publicly discredited. That means colloquially presented as completely pointless. After all, she last spoke in Parliament in September 22, not to mention the office hours in her constituency and the fact that her place of residence is outside her constituency, and she has long since turned her back on her voters. However, Sunak has even more trouble. As I also mentioned in my live stream, Sunak has unintentionally violated the code of conduct for MPs again, according to the responsible official. The Conservative politician had failed to disclose his wife Akshata Murthy's financial interest in a childcare agency that was supposed to benefit from a government measure. Again. However, the Commissioner for Compliance with the Parliamentary Code of Conduct, that's Daniel Greenberg, came to the assessment that the breach was due to the Prime Minister's confusion over the declaration rules. Greenberg therefore stopped the investigation that began in April without further action, as British media reported on Thursday. Sunak is also considered the wealthiest head of government in British history because of his wife's wealth. And it's not the first time Sunak has gotten into trouble over Murthy's financial interests. In 22, it became known that Murthy benefited from a special legal status that allowed her to pay taxes in India instead of in Great Britain. At the time, she held a 0.9% stake that was worth around £500 million in the software company Infosys, which her father co-founded, according to the BBC. According to estimates, Murthy saved millions in taxes in Great Britain, and Sunak was Chancellor of the Exchequer at the time. But Murthy subsequently gave up this special status. And now the Labour Party has been far ahead of the Conservatives in the polls for months, and those scandals helped. If they stay ahead, party leader Keir Starmer could become Britain's next Prime Minister. When Labour leader Keir Starmer was recently asked what he hates most, he said, "Failure. I hate losing." It's the victory that counts, he said. For the party, at least at the moment, this seems almost within reach. In opinion polls, the Labour Party is currently up to 20 percentage points ahead of the Conservatives. If the party maintains the lead, it would win in the next general election no later than January 2025, and Starmer would become Britain's new Prime Minister. The fact that Labour is doing so well has less to do with Starmer and more to do with the Conservative Party's poor performance. That was also emphasized by Sophie Stowes from the think tank UK in a Changing Europe. Given the chaos in the Tory party, voters have lost confidence in the current government. Many Brits consider Starmer rather boring, but it could be that this is exactly what will bring him victory. After Corbyn announced his resignation following the party's resounding defeat in the 2019 general election, Starmer was elected the new leader in April 2020. Since then, he has turned Labour inside out and brought it back to the centre. In order to stay on course in view of the good poll numbers, the opposition leader is now shying away from big announcements. Apparently, the party leader also fears scaring off voters with promises that are too big, because Conservative politicians like Boris Johnson and most recently, and before that Liz Truss, have been promising the moon from heaven for years. But, and I never must forget to add that, Starmer is still promising things that are impossible. And that is with regard to Brexit. And that's why I always say that's why I'm angry, because he's promising stuff and not saying how he wants to do this. And from everything we know, those things he promises with the other things he's saying he will definitely not do are impossible. So it will stay interesting. And the closer we get to the elections, the more we will hear from the parties, and we will definitely thoroughly analyze this here on my channel as well. But as long as the Tories fight within each other that much, there is a good chance for Starmer, although at the moment with what they are claiming, I only see a change of style in government, but not of content, and that is a problem as well. If you want to know more about Brexit or other British politics, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.